everybody else join in. I always forget to do that. I sort of like as soon as we go live, I'm just like Zoom. I'm off away, and I forget we've got to wait a little bit of time to let everybody join. Jane, oh, hang on. Before we get to that, I think we've given long enough. So this is the final keynote of the day. Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming back. We after this we actually have a fireside chat with myself and Roger, and also Kat's joining us as well. I mean, MapCamp, we've been a bit unlucky this year in terms of we had to have a number of speakers pull out. Patrick was going to tell you all about green robotics, fascinating space. Unfortunately, he's not available today, and of course Rachel has some other issues which has prevented her from being here today. We did have Orhan join in from Istanbul. Orhan, unfortunately, was very unlucky. I mean, his entire internet connection, he had to be on a phone because so he wasn't able to share slides. I mean, his area is all about he does city transport for Istanbul, and so he worked with a whole bunch of city planners to map out parts of transportation within cities. And what they realized in the process was that virtual is actually a transport system. It impacts other transport systems. And the city planners, it's not what they had been considering. And so this impacts all sorts of things like congestion, environmental impacts as well. And I've got to say, I've loved the talks today. I mean, we started off a number of talks, including Pip Decks and this Charles's company. And this is Strachey Pip Decks, which is created by Ben, who was given a talk later on, and you'll find loads of Wardley mapping in there. That's not a plug to go and buy it, but I did. So, but there we are. But the other thing is behind the scenes, Jane, because Liam is, as you'll find out, somewhere else, and it's somewhere else which has really poor connectivity, and we can't say where he is. He's very kindly sent us across an audio of him speaking. And so we're going to go through that, and I put some slides together. But just before we start, I thought I asked Jane, because Jane's been in the background dealing with lots of the technical problems that we have had, trying to keep people in the rooms. And I know Jane likes to sometimes hide away, but Jane, it's been fantastic. I mean, we've taken a long time getting everybody together, all the things on Slack, all the discussions to get here today. I just really wanted to say, Jane, fantastic. What a great job.
Thank you. I was 21 when I joined this call.
Yeah, you were.
Aged a few years.
Well, you've been. So we've had this running debate because we're going to do MapCamp every 2 years, I think. We're not going to do it every year. It's going to be every 2 years. And because it does take a lot of effort, a lot of time to get set up. The big discussion, which I know you've started in the one of the chat channels, I think it was the help one, was whether the next one should be physical. Now, if we're going to do a physical event, it'll probably be in London. It means us trying to get sponsors because, you know, I give up time, others give up time, we give up all this time. I mean, this doesn't doesn't pay wages and things like this. I mean, you know, I buy my own tickets. It's a big sort of risk and investment to do a physical event, but we'd like to hear from you. So everybody, if you go onto the help channel and just I think it was the help channel, is that what you started, or general?
General, yeah.
General. And if you want it to be a physical event, tell us why. We might come around and ask if anybody knows somebody who can sponsor the event, because it's not a small undertaking, is it?
No, with hotels you have big costs as opposed to virtual, but I want to get back face to face. I want to talk to people. I don't like this technology, but
no,
we cover a lot on virtual. I agree with that. Maybe a mixture of both, but yeah, I want to see people.
You want to see people.
Yeah, I want to have a drink with you. I want to talk to you.
That's very well. Okay, well, we can hope for that, as in we can hope we get the sponsorship to do a physical event, which is a great segue into Liam's talk, because we've had a lot of conversations taking on various aspects of issues of sustainability and also recoverability, often from different angles, different ways of thinking about things. We've talked about green software, we've talked about business. But one thing I wanted to do was have a keynote which was about hope, because often, people can get somewhat tired, exhausted. I loved Kat's talk, about exhaustion, but sometimes we get overwhelmed by things and the amount of information, which is also why I talk about trying to think about different perspectives. But to counter that feeling of exhaustion, you need hope. So I asked Liam to talk about hope. Unfortunately, he can't be here, but hopefully this will work. Share my screen. Can I just check? You can see it says Liam Maxwell somewhere else.
Yep.
Perfect. And I will start his talk.
Hello, I'm Liam Maxwell. I'm a long-term fan of mapping. I've collaborated with Simon for a long time. I'm really sorry I can't be on video today, and I'm just stuck on audio, but I've had some connectivity issues whilst traveling. But Simon asked me to come and speak to try and convey, as he said, why is there hope? I think there's a lot of hope, but it's not obvious sometimes, and we've got a full-scale invasion of Ukraine at the moment. There are huge economic challenges, and our learned norms are being removed one by one as we look across our own businesses and our lives. And in many ways, that uncertainty is really not grounds for optimism. But actually, I find there is a huge case for optimism at the moment, because although it's increasingly complex, we can map our way out of here. And in that way, we can become more resilient and more certain and much more confident about what we're doing. Maps may not be 100% accurate, but situational awareness wins. Let me give you an example. Recently, I was in a field with a map, and without it, I would have been fairly severely injured. There were squares on that map, 50 and then 25 and then 12 meter squares, and they showed me the path to safety. I was in a demo field of a minefield, and I was trying to understand how demining worked and how this craft could be re-engineered and rethought so that it could work at a different speed. And it was a really classic case of a major industrial craft looking at a new way of working. Because the traditional way of working in this space is that you're on your knees, prodding forwards with your hands. Then you start to use a pointer, rather like a conductor's pointer, to try and identify tripwires amongst grass, and slowly you manage to move forward. A bit more industrializing of that, more innovation of that gives you the ability to use a detector and to wave that in front of you. And that enables you to start working at a slightly different pace. You're really going up by 7 to 8 times forward. So instead of 2 meters or 2 square meters, you're looking at 14 square meters. And then you're starting to move with the detector, enables you to go up to about 800 square meters a day, which is a massive increase on that finally teasing forward that you have to do in some circumstances. And I also saw some brilliant innovation with what I could only really describe as an armoured lawnmower, which would go through cutting vegetation and enabling people to start clearing the land, and the factor of 100 comes in at that point. You're starting to clear quite a lot more land from mines relatively quickly. Those tractors are remote controlled, so you're not having someone sitting on them. You're driving through using a first-person vision drone technology to move it forwards. And that sort of approach enables you to build a platform on which to deliver that really intrinsically difficult mine clearance quickly, effectively, but all from the view of somebody on the ground. And that sort of move from prodder to detectorist to tractor enables people to move and clear a lot more ground in a minefield. But there's got to be a better way, and that's what we've been looking at. And how can we leverage a common scalable resource and really focus on that goal? The goal is not just the goal is to go and clear the land, because it's not just finding the mines, it's finding where there are no mines is just as important. And in the difficult circumstances of Ukraine, being able to open up that land and being able to enable it to return to farming is really, really powerful. And that's what we're looking at the moment with drones and AI and image recognition and pattern recognition, and trying to find out where we can identify these weird signals and the noise of vegetation that enable us to see where things are clear and where things are dangerous, and doing that hundreds of times, thousands of times faster than the tractor, than the detectorist, than the prodder, means that we're able to start clearing land much more quickly and much more effectively. Now I say we, it's not really me, because I've been sitting working for a day with the Halo Trust, but what an amazing organisation that is. And I really do think it's worth having a look at how they are looking at leveraging common platforms of aerial imagery, of clearance routines, of really enabling common approaches so that they can deploy specialism at the edge. That's been a really interesting view of looking at using our approaches of focus and leverage to enable them to go faster, to get moving quicker, and to enable farmers to return to the land, to restore the continuity of the economy. And really, that's the strongest form of resistance that people have in Ukraine sometimes, is the continuity, the ability to say, whatever you do, I'm going to keep going. And that form of resilience is tremendously powerful. And so a couple of things that really came out from that, lessons which were, apart from just focusing on the mission, but think laterally, really focus on what that user need was, which is to clear the land, and then insist on the highest standards. You've got to be really accurate. You've got to be sure of what you're doing, and think big. Think of ways of doing this that are completely different to ways that were done before. So there's an example. I mean, my working world is in public services, and our job is to help government leaders accelerate their reforms and modernise more effectively and more efficiently. And I thought it might be an idea just to think about, where do we see that done well? For this generation of approaches, I do return to India. Look at the really interesting stack approach that they're using to try and standardize ruthlessly around various common simplified components of capability, and get those components to do one thing well and make it work and enable it to form that stack. I often joked that JAM was the leading force in public service modernization that we could see worldwide. I obviously wasn't referring to a particular British civil servant. I was referring to the Jandan Aadhaar mobile combination of being able to link Aadhaar, the identity platform or component, the identity component, with Jandan banking and the mobile engagement, and that led on to the use of the Universal Payments Initiative, which enables the the India stack to be put together and run really effectively and efficiently across a wide range of citizenry. They've got more than 1.4 billion people enrolled in the scheme and into that service. And it's that clear focus on helping users join it, helping them join in, that enables that to work. In a way, that unbundling of services into capabilities makes the difference. And some more examples really where we've seen this worldwide, which have been found really powerful in Sao Paulo, working with the identity components around a state identity register, enabled us to help them identify just where the user interface would enable them to use data which had already been recorded. That use of the sort of once only approach only really became available once we'd mapped out what was there. There's a roadmap to civil justice which enabled judges, totally non-technical people, to try and understand how to move forward and modernize the civil justice workflow, which is deeply complex but can be decomplexified, disambiguated using a map, and really designing around the user journey and not around the structure chart. And that's one of the things that we've seen right at the heart of the beginning of all of Simon's work and books on mapping, but it's so powerful still. And that enables people to focus on the really core components of what they were doing, for example, in justice, that fairness and equity were the outcome. And that design principle really hits home. Because what we're trying to find in public services are things that are open, that are consulted upon, that people feel are fair, that are fair and are transparent. But it does mean that you need to design for the user. You need to design around the user's approach. And that ultimately means decoupling. That means decoupling the user journey from the structure of the delivery department. And it also means decoupling data from the sources and services that you're running. And that approach of having simple capabilities really does make it work. That's why Aadhaar is so powerful in India, because it's able to scale without complexity, because it's been kept simple. It's rather like Pix. Pix is a Brazilian approach. It's a payment system. Product manager I met earlier this year, a guy called Carlos Brandt, absolutely staggering simplification and simplicity around that service, and that capability means that he can. They've been able to take in 78 million people in the past couple of years into their online payment system. That's 78 million people with a route out of poverty through a simple, clear, fast service. Really transparent, really powerful. But all based around this idea of having common capabilities, small components, common capabilities, which enable services to be built and put together around the user rather than building some massive monolith. And those services and those tools, populate the center to the bottom right of a Wardley map. And that way of thinking about how to use those services and how to that map helps you explain them, really gets us into the heart of brilliant public services. I'm going to get back to a place I was at recently, which is in Ukraine, and the common platform approach that they've had there around an app has been astounding, and the use of the DIA app has been transformative, not just for the government but for everybody's approach during a time of conflict. But talking to the minister, it's really clear decoupling the data from the services means that you can then add at speed, you can add new services and new capabilities without being held back by an inherent technical debt. That approach is so powerful. Much easier to get a driving license put on there, to put in education components. Recently, they've added a huge new set of education components, social benefits, access to health, even new services such as how you register damage to a house because of a drone strike. Also, enabling people to identify unfriendly newcomers in your area quietly, quickly, effectively, but with great precision. That approach to the service where you are keeping the service design at the heart of and right at the front of your thinking, but they're doing that because you've been able to decouple your data from the services is really, really powerful. And it's a really successful application. They've got 18 million users. That's gone up 4 million in the last 2 years. So even in the course of massive change within the country, and you've got half the country running off an app. And it's really been interesting to see the growth of that and how people have moved. In addition, one of the core components to that design approach is that decoupling is the use of core registers and the ability to run your government government and public services based on registers. Sounds relatively normal to somebody who's been running a business, but in government that's tremendously powerful and difficult to do. And so that's one of the reasons why it's such a interesting approach to see people leverage those components, and also that mission, really where it's all about being able to build and deliver services at speed, services at scale, but also services where every time they make a change, it makes it more effective and more secure. There are a huge number of other examples that we saw as we conducted the Future of Government Awards earlier this year with the United Nations and Public Digital. And some examples, the digital identity system in Brazil, the open social protection platform in the Philippines. The Philippines actually has huge numbers of different pieces of open source, including everything from their record systems. But the reason I'm so enthused about this is because open source is a really powerful driver in this space. We're government, we're public services. They don't compete. And so sharing is quite possible. It's why you see that Morocco is running a service for identity rather similar to India, rather similar to the Philippines. That's because it is the Indian approach. It's leveraging the MOSIP framework. And interesting also to see that other countries like Madagascar are looking at leapfrogging major Western governments who've always stumbled over identity programs by being able to bring that in quickly, effectively, by borrowing other people's common capabilities. And that ability to leverage those common capabilities at the bottom right of a map really mean that governments can move forward faster and more effectively using open source. So Simon said, give us hope. And I thought, yeah, there's a bit of hope in what I've talked about, but what you really need is a guide. And I've got to say that you might have recognized some of the language that I've been speaking, because there is a guide there, which is brilliant. It's just been released. It's a book. I do recommend go and get it. It's called Platform Land. It's written by Richard Pope, and it's inspiring, it's engaging, but it's also really powerful leadership. It really is a brilliant way of encapsulating what it means to move forward with public service, but how to design and look at that approach effectively. And the situational awareness of mapping, for me, made that an easy read to find things that really helped me identify how to go forward. So there is all of the wisdom you need for 2024 in that book. There is a lot of hope for us all, but I would suggest that it's by looking at examples, it's by looking at the successes that people generate, that we can see a real way forward for collaboration, but also for leveraging common resources. And right at the heart of that approach is the mapping approach that we all seem to be signed up to. And the reason why I think there's so much hope is because there's so much change that we can bring so quickly by using that. I hope you've had a great conference. I'm sorry if I've been unable to be on screen or take you through a set of boring slides, but I hope that message gives you an approach to your programs and projects, and a way of engaging with much more hope, much more positivity, and also a great outlook from what I hope has been a really good conference. Thank you.
Now, as I said, Liam I've known Liam now for, oh gosh, 15 years or so. We worked together on something called the Better for Less paper, which helped transform, help support changes in UK government, help support the creation of something called GDS. It helped create something called spend control. And I worked heavily with Liam over the years. I mean, Liam is traveling around the world, working with all sorts of governments all over the world. So on really difficult problems, social issues, to justice systems, and of course he teaches mapping all over the world. So he really wanted to be here today to be able to give this talk himself. Unfortunately, he's in a part of the world where, you know, the communication is not great, so he was not able to make it. But so he sent his message, and I you know, I often talk about wanting to use maps for good. And there have been examples, RNLI and others, where maps have been used in ways that save lives, and other examples where they make lives better. I loved Sarah's talk about the use of mapping in the NHS. I mean, for me, the mapping research we did in there, which focused on that I did in terms of healthcare, really focused on the importance of things like patient-reported outcomes. We really have unfortunately a sick care system, not a healthcare system. We're very good at treating symptoms, not making people healthy. But ultimately, it's not the map that really matters; it's the conversation that the map enables. It's simply a way of taking a set of information that we sort of may or may not know, and providing a different perspective, a different way of looking at it, and a way that we can then challenge the assumptions that we have around the space in a fairly safe environment, which enables the conversations, which are actually the most important thing. And so for me, you know, the reason why I asked Liam to talk to the subject of hope to finish off the conference is that hope comes from having that conversation, being able to challenge others safely, and viewing from different perspectives. That's the way that we get to find paths through many of these problems. So at that point, I'm going to say a huge thank you to Liam for sharing his audio and sending a few of the images which I put together in a slide. I'm also going to say a massive thanks to Jane for making all of this happen. I know we've got the fireside chat, the final bit to go, and I'm delighted. Kat's going to be speaking there, Dave Snowden's going to be speaking there, and we've got Roger Martin as well. So hopefully should have an interesting chat. I have no idea where it goes. Obviously there will be no slides. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves today. You found some interesting talks as well. I mean, a huge thank you to all the speakers. And a huge thank you for all of you for coming and sharing and being part of mapping. So big thank you. Jane, any final words?
No, just that all the recordings will be on the platform from tomorrow, so you can just log into the platform and you'll be able to see anything that you missed. Yeah, that's all.
That's all. So we're all done. I mean, oh, I better go and get prepared for the fireside chat. When is that? It's 7 o'clock. It's half an hour now. I'm sure I'm supposed to be jumping onto another Zoom call. So I better go and do that. Better get prepared. Hopefully see some of you at the 7 o'clock fireside chat with me, Dave Snowden, and Kat. And thank you all for the kind words that have been said. There is one, oh God, one very, I'm terrible. I can never not do the very last thing. So I'm going to share something. Hang on a second. There is a Discord channel that many of us belong to. You're welcome to come and join. I will put the link in into the group chats on here. As I said, I do lots of mapping in different areas. Hopefully you can see a mirror board here. Each one of these different areas actually has its own entire mirror board. Whoops, oh yes, it's warning me I've got to go and join another call. And, you know, these are things like healthcare, transportation, manufacturing. And what we do is we get a group of usually 60, 70 people together, and we'll map out a particular space. Like, for example, we'll start with transport. We'll ask about what words matter. We'll categorize them into themes. And then as groups, we'll split off and map them out. And when we're mapping, I mean, we don't magically, you know, this is the final summary. You should see the horror shows that are my mirror boards for how we go through the process of mapping. But we do this over, you know, a space of about 10 hours, map out an industry from multiple different perspectives. And this one was the one Orhan was talking to. And on here, if I just quickly draw a note, can I draw? I can do. Oh, that's a bit thick. Let's just shrink that down. These were all city planners, and they talked about how people need city functions, and those city functions depend upon space, and that space has ways and means. So we normally talk about trains and automobiles. We talk about roads, rail. We talk about physical space. And what they realized, and what had been missing in a lot of their transport planning, was actually that virtual space existed, and it had means, and it had modes of transports as well. And like any other transport system, it impacted the others. So if more people are online, there's less congestion on the road. Sounds really obvious, but it has quite a profound impact for them. Anyway, I do this across about 17 different industries. But what I wanted to say is I am going to run one of these research sessions, and it's going to be in November. Oh, actually, or I might get one on do one on MapCamp theme, recovery and sustainability. Probably not enough time. The next one really planned was gender and identity. That's probably the one I'm going to focus on, because we've done a lot of cultural mapping, and I did some early work mapping out the concepts of gender and identity. So if anybody fancies being involved, of course, I'll put it on Twitter, and I'll say, you know, we're going to do this. Do shout out, do come and find us. You have to give up 10 hours of your time, I'm afraid. You'll be with 60 to 70 other people. We do it all online, and we're going to try and map out the concepts of gender and identity. Big thorny issues, but that's why we use a map as well. Right, so at that point, I've definitely overrun. I'm definitely getting told off. I have to go to another Zoom, and I will see you all at 7 o'clock. And I just want to say thank you so much for being involved. And Jane, thank you for making this happen.
No problem. Thanks, everybody.